Hello, beloved friends. I'm Pastor Brenda Peterson, and this is Staying Busy with the Pastor. Today we're going to be canning some tomatoes and making tomato sauce. The tomatoes are from our little garden that we grew in a pot. And we did share some of the tomatoes, but a lot of the tomatoes are really not pretty. Yeah, not pretty. But they are tasty and they are good. And so we are going to go ahead and prepare these tomatoes. One of the things about these tomatoes is that they do not turn a pure orange. We were given a tomato from the neighbor who were also growing, and theirs is a nice pure orange and ours is not. And interestingly enough, not only is ours not a nice pure orange on the backside, but look, they're green. And because they were green, when they grow, we were seeing the green. And we tried to get them so that they were orange all the way around like this one. But it wasn't working. And what was happening was they were getting softer on the bottom. And then our neighbor found out from somebody who knows tomatoes that we have a, I can't remember what she said, but it's like a heritage type tomato, and they're going to be green on top. And so they're not going to turn precisely orange. And when they do turn precisely orange, they're going to be overripe. Some people say you can't over-ripen a tomato, but you and I know you can over-ripen a tomato. We're going to start by putting our tomatoes in the hot boiling water. Then what I have over here is an ice, I don't know if you can see that in the camera, but it's a bowl of ice water. We're going to put it in here for a minute until the skin starts to crack. We're going to put it in the water as soon as it's done. I used to have this really nice big spoon, more like a netting, that you could take things out of hot grease and things. But when I moved here, I thought to myself, I don't need that anymore. I'm going to give that away. And I did. And I wish I sure had it today. Isn't that the way most things go? So best we can use is a spoon and maybe a pair of tongs to help us out. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and lower these things into the water one by one. We don't want to make too big of a splash. So as we put these tomatoes in, and you can add extra ice to the water if it gets too warm, because you do want that to be cold water. And when we get to that point, the tomatoes in the pot are only going to boil for like a minute, and we'll start to see the skin start to crack. Oh, here's one. I don't know if you can see this. Let's see if you can see this. See the crack of the skin right here? All right. And that tells us that those are ready to go in the cold water as they begin to crack and separate from the tomato. At first, when I first started picking the tomatoes, they got ripe slowly, one at a time. And so when they were ripe one at a time, we ate them in salads and we ate them fresh. And then we started accumulating too many. So we found some nice ones and we gave those away. And then there was still too many. So what we did is I made some tomato bread. And it was delicious. But you only need one tomato for a whole loaf of bread. So that wasn't working. And so I decided it was time to get the canning out and can the rest and make tomato sauce. So those will sit, and I'm going to go ahead and start some more in the pot. And this one has a bad spot on it, but we're going to cut it off when the time comes. No problem. The best type of tomatoes for this is probably not the heritage that I'm using, but you can can any type of tomato that you want. If you're going to make a nice thick tomato paste, you want Romas. aromas will work really nicely for making a paste of tomato. But we're making sauce, and so we just, seems like they've been in there a long time, but they're not cracking, so don't know what to say about that. There's one that's cracking. Ooh, that's a beautiful tomato, by the way. Look how pretty that is. That one even still has its stem on it. Isn't that pretty? That one turned red all the way around, and it's not real squishy. So that was a good tomato. Probably should have kept that one for sandwiches. I've got some more tomatoes out on the vine, mini green ones. Not sure if they're gonna ripen in time, but you know what? It's okay. This one's also another beauty. Look at that. No flaws. No flaws in that one at all. Ooh, and it turned. So I can tell you it didn't turn while it was on the vine, because I didn't pick anything off the vine that pretty. Here's one with a deep green color with the, still a perfect little tomato. And anyway, I've got a bunch of green ones out there. So if they don't start turning, we're going to pick off the green ones, and then we're going to make some chili verde salsa, and it will be great with green tomatoes. They say don't fry your green tomatoes. Make chili verde salsa. What else can I tell you about tomatoes? These sure are not pretty, but they are going to taste yummy, yummy. I used to have lots of quart jars and wide mouth jars, and I had hundreds of jars. And somebody was having a wedding, and they needed some quart jars for the decoration of their wedding. So I gave them most of the quart jars for their wedding. And then somebody else was starting canning for the very first time, and so I gave them some jars. Anyway, I decided that I wouldn't keep any of the quart ones. It's just Lee and I, and we don't need a big, huge container of stuff, unfortunately, because now here we are, and we're going to have little bitty tomato sauce, and because I have only small containers. Okay, as you can see, the skin just comes right on off, and so we just peel the skin right off. Okay, I got all of the tomatoes skinned, and that was not as easy as it was supposed to be. If you use the right type of tomatoes, the skin comes right off. But the way these turned green and they were red, they were super juicy, very, very full of a lot of liquid, and the green part didn't peel. And so I had to kind of cut that up. And you know what? As I look at this, and let me show you the tomatoes. Let's see, too close. Okay, see the tomatoes? They're not sliceable. They're more like what you'd make stewed tomatoes out of versus sliced tomatoes. And so, and you saw all the liquid in there? Just tons of liquid. Let me get a spoon. All right. Hear it? Tons and tons of liquid. So this tomato sauce is going to be not as thick as I would have liked it, but we're still salvaging the tomatoes, and that's the most important part. So it will be a thinner sauce, and that's okay, because it'll be very tomatoey, very fresh. And so in the middle of winter, when the tomatoes are no longer giving tomatoes, we will have tomato sauce, fresh. And think about all the money I'm saving in that. So, okay, now, what I've done here is inside here, I have put the skins. And I put the skins in here so I can squish them through these holes right here and just kind of work it through to make sure that I've gotten all of the good stuff from the tomatoes out. And then we'll be able to see what we've got there, because, like I said, some of the skins didn't peel as easily, so some of the pulp is still on the skins. And so I'm going to work that out, and we're going to have a nice juice, I guess you'd say. Anyway, once we get this going, I'm going to slice these, the ones that I can slice, but and they may turn out terrible. Okay, so my great idea to use the container didn't work. It was way too messy. So I'm just taking and just slicing on this bendable cutting board. Then I can pick it up and pour it back in. And so just cutting those up so they're smaller pieces and not these big chunks. That's what we're going to do next. And I'll just keep slicing away. I've sliced up the tomatoes. I have put them in the pot, and as you can see, it's a very missed that one. Anyway, you can see it's very soupy. I'm debating upon now whether I should not use the tomatoes in slices because it's not a thick, it's just a moist tomatoes, and so when you use the proper tomatoes and you slice them and you put them in, you don't have all the liquid. It does make liquid, but you don't have all the liquid to start with. And so what ends up happening is you pack the tomatoes in, and they're sliced a little thinner and a little dicier than what I've got. And so I was thinking maybe pureeing it into the liquid and just making the sauce. Forget about the tomatoes being in there. I'm still going to contemplate that before we move to the next step. But I wanted to tell you about the next step. The next step would be to put the tomatoes into jars. And so I have put together a selection of jars that's right beside me. Let me just move a little bit. Oops, ran into my collection of jars. Anyway, these are a wide mouth jar. And as you can see, it's a wide mouth jar. And I'm limited on how many. I only got 3. So I can only use 3 of the wide mouth jars. And you can see they're not very big because I gave away all my good size ones, because although I still can jellies, I didn't take into consideration tomato sauce or chili or stew. So I might have to get me some bigger jars. But for this project, we're just going to do what we got to do with. So I can do 3 of this size jar because I have 3 big ones. And then I have 3 of this kind of jar, which would take the smaller lid. And so I've got 3 of these kind of jars, so I'll use those. And then I've got 6 of this taller one that's also got the proper jar lid for it. And so I can do 6 of those. I'm not sure how much that will fill. It seems like it's going to fill quite a bit. So I also have different sizes that are smaller. I don't think we're going to need the smaller one because seriously, these are jam size. You know, this is what you make a jam with and give it away to friends. As you can tell, I'm not a professional canner. I go through whims. Today I'm canning. Yesterday I made bread. So it's just kind of one of those things. It works, it works. If it doesn't work, well, it's gonna work. So I've got confidence that it's gonna work. It's just gonna take more work than I intended because I gotta use a bunch of little jars. Anyway, I'm glad you're watching this because I'm gonna do it anyway. Might as well record it, right? Anyway, let me go ahead and show you about filling the jars. I have somewhere, I have a funnel, and we'll use the funnel inside the jar, and we will fill the jar to right at the bottom of the funnel, which will give about 1/2 inch, as you can see, this much room where there won't be any liquid. And then we'll put the lids on, and well, we'll have to clean the jars on the top, make sure that we get a good seal. But that's how we're going to do it. We're going to spoon it into this. But I've missed a couple of big chunks, so I'm going to take care of that first. I'm going to contemplate whether or not I should blend it. Okay. I decided just to leave the chunks and go ahead and can the chunks that I have with some of the juices. I have a lot of juice left over, but that's okay. I also decided not to use any of the wide mouth jars, just to go ahead and use what you see before me. Now, before we seal these things up, we have to take a paper towel and go over the edge, around the edge, to make sure that there's no nothing on top there. Because when we seal it, we need for it to actually seal. And if there's anything on top, we need to do that. Now, I did all of the jars except that one while you were gone. And so just to kind of speed things away. So anyway, next what we're going to do is we're going to take these lids right here. And we're going to put a lid on each one of these jars. We're going to make sure that they're on centered because we want them to seal nicely. And so every one of the jars, I'm kind of squished down so you could see the jars, but I'm not this short. Anyway, we're gonna make sure they're all straight before we put the ring on. We take the ring and we seal it up. And now, this is kind of an interesting thing because some of the people on the internet say just to twist it and so it's tight, but not just hand tight, just like I did. And the Italian woman said, put them on tight. And oh, wow, what do we do? Put them on tight or put them on loose? Not sure, but I'm going to put them on like that. She used a man, so you know hers were nice and tight. But I don't know. I've done a lot of canning and I've never put them on super tight. So not sure why they would want them on super tight. Okay, all the lids are on the jars and the jars are being put into the water. And this is a boiling bath. You use a nice set of tongs in order to pick up the jars and hold on to them. And then you lower the jars down into the water. Now, the water needs to cover the top of the jars. And mine's not quite, I mean, it's over the top, but it's just barely. So I've got another pot of water right here. And I'm just going to add some water so it's over the top. And all the jars are covered. And it looks like they're covered fairly well. Then we turn on the stove, and we let this start to boil. Now, the important part about this, let me reach for the lid. The important part about this is that we need to not start counting our boiling bath until the water is actually boiling. So it will take 45 minutes from the time that the water starts boiling. And then when it is done, we will take off the lid and we'll turn it off and we'll wait about 10 minutes before removing the jars from the boiling water. And so right now there's nothing for us to do except wait. Okay, let's finish this up. The cans have been sitting in there. They've cooled off a little bit after the 45 minutes of bath. Now, we gently take them out, and you can see, look at all the liquid that has fallen to the bottom. After they pop, the popping is the sealing, and after they do that, we can shake it up and it all blend back together. And it won't look like this. I could have added a little bit of olive oil to the jar and before I sealed it, and then it would have mixed together. But the reason why I didn't is because I'm not sure I want these tomatoes to be all about Italian. You use tomatoes for a lot of different things. It could be a base of a soup or you know, something else. So I didn't want to make it Italian. I considered putting bay leaves in it and even some garlic in it before I processed. But again, I don't want to limit what the tomatoes are. At this point, this is just simply tomatoes that are making a sauce. And we can use that sauce and that for all different kinds of things. And of course, mostly we'll probably use it for Italian anyway. But when we pull them out, we can add all our seasons and spices at that time for well, just like you would if you bought a can of tomato sauce. But the thing is that we did not add salt in here. So right now, this is just pure tomatoes. You'll add your salt and your spices according to, well, not you, but I'll add my salt and spices according to what we want to do at that particular time when we get ready to cook it. And so at this point, it's not sitting in a bunch of salt, and it's just going to be fresh tomatoes. And so these things will sit here and they'll start to cool off. And as they start to cool off, they'll start popping and they'll go pop. And what happens is right now there's little like rays. And then when they pop, they go boink like that. And that seals them down. Then what's going to happen is that after 24 hours or so, I'm going to take the ring off and I'm going to test to make sure that the lid actually did seal. Anything that did not seal, I'll go ahead and use right away. But if it did seal, I'll just write the date on the top of the lid and we'll just pack it away for when we're ready to use it this winter. So anyway, thanks for watching. Staying busy with the pastor. God bless you. Bye-bye now.